It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. I know we're going to have a good show today because it's one of those shows where I've been talking to the guest off the air for the last about 30 minutes. We've been talking already before we even got started. We have Augie Constatino. He's a surfer and artist. He lives in the Hawaiian kingdom over there. ConstatinoArt.com. You can check out his beautiful artwork. He's got this fascinating story about his grandfather who was involved in some kind of an assassination with the Black Hand in New York. It's very incredible life history. But today we're going to be talking about Gator Rogowski. Mark Gator Rogowski. Okay, and if you ever seen, there's a documentary about this called Stoked, The Rise and Fall of Gator. And it's about a skateboarder back in the 90s who wound up killing a young woman. He's in prison now today. And our friend here today, Augie Constatino, is the one who led him to the Lord and changed his life forever. Augustino, are you there?
Yes, aloha. How are you guys?
Thank you so much. Tell us about yourself. Who is Augie Constatino?
Oh, my gosh. I was born in San Diego, in La Jolla, in the 60s. My parents were artists. Not my mother, but my father was a sculptor and a painter. Graduated University of Houston, and then was in Otis Art Institute in L.A. and ended up raising kids in San Diego. And I was a surfer at age 6 or 7, and competed, turned pro at a pretty young age, a young teenager. And just kind of ruled around Carlsbad and Lahaina, Maui, where my father lived. And we went back and forth from Hawaii to California quite a bit. And that was, of course, years before I met Gator, Mark Anthony. But yeah, I'm just a surf bum with some Italian heritage.
And now right now you make a full-time living off the art?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Constantino art. My father, his art is kind of resurging a little bit, but I started painting after my father's death, and he died New Year's Day, 2001. It wasn't long after that I was logging in the Northwest. And had a contract fail because of 9/11. It was a federal contract. And so losing that contract, I was kind of going nuts financially as a father of 4, and started painting just for therapeutic reasons, dealing with that. And so it turned into another art career for the youngest son of Ralph, my father.
I tell you, what a life, man. Lives in Hawaii, surfer, artist. You got it made, man. Why don't you give us your testimony? How did you how did you get saved?
Well, my parents split up when I was pretty young. Mom stayed in Carlsbad, and my dad moved to the Hawaiian Kingdom. He believed that, Lahaina was the original capital of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and that the United States was illegally occupying the state of Hawaii or the Hawaiian Kingdom. And so my dad was, in my mind, all those years growing up, kind of a nutcase artist, crazy man who didn't believe that the United States belonged in Hawaii. I kind of grown to believe him in a lot of ways nowadays, but it was just a situation where I ended up in Hawaii, and my mom stayed in California. I lived a unique life because of surfing, and surfing kind of kept me out of the bars, and it kind of kept me off the dope and some of the bad choices that friends and family were making during those years. Surfing was my action sports involvement has been nothing short of a savior for my life, because during those years I would have quickly ran from anything spiritual to find my fulfillment in drugs or chasing girls or whatever I was into in those teen years. So I really am thankful for my upbringing within action sports and within surfing industry.
And then how did you come about getting saved?
I was doing a lot of competitions, getting ready to go to South Africa one year. I think it was 1986. I was living on Kauai at the time. I had purchased tickets and was kind of excited about my first trip surfing ASP, and got in a head-on collision on a Monday morning at about 5 a.m. coming around Prince Kuhio Drive on the island of Kauai. I was hit by a drunk driver, severed my right leg about 80% off, punctured a lung, broke a bunch of ribs, nose, all kinds of damage. Spent a month in the hospital. But after that hospital stay, I had some trouble with the law because I don't think I had a driver's license and no insurance and stuff like that. And so I didn't get to go on tour, and I was quite suicidal at 18. So during that time, an old guy came in and he was smiling, but he was like 90 years old in the hospital there and was trying to minister to me. I was just laughing at him. He had like one gold tooth in his mouth. But I was like, old guy, what are you so happy about? You know, you're old, and of course you're going to meet your maker, and of course you're spiritual because you're going to die. And I'm young. I have my whole life ahead of me, and look at me. I'm ruined in this hospital room, and my career's ruined. And I gave him my sad sob story where my surfing career was ruined. So you can see right there, Ed, I had something in common with Mark, having experienced that younger. When I met Mark and heard Mark Gator Anthony's story, I was like, dude, this dude is suffering from his career and his ego being attacked a little bit. And so I had a grounds where we could relate. We turned out to be 5 doors away from each other, so we became good friends. And I had no knowledge that things were going to go the way they went. But yeah, that's how I got saved. Just seeing my own mortality and the ignorance of some of my pursuits during that season of my life. I just said, you know, there is a God, and I need to meet him, and I need to know him. That's what happened in 1986, and so it would have been 1988 when I met Gator. I think it was 88 or 89.
So you got saved in 86. You got saved in 86.
I'm sorry?
You got saved in
86.
Yeah, I got saved in 89 myself. Now I got saved in an Assemblies of God church, a Pentecostal Christian. Now, how would you describe yourself?
I don't know, maybe a soft Pentecostal.
Okay.
I believe in the power of God that is undeniable. You know, I kind of feel a lot of people say, why don't we see God doing the miracles that we read about in the New Testament here in America? And I always kind of answer with, you know, God goes where he's asked and where he's sought and where he's wanted. And I mean, if it isn't a miracle making me a man, if it isn't a miracle of God making me deny my own depravity, if it isn't a miracle of God making me be a good person, then I'm not going to be a good person. So my testimony is that God grabbed a hold of me, caused me to acknowledge my own error. When I look in the mirror, I see really my own sin, not the sins of others. And I try and walk away from that mirror going, you know, God is real and he made me for a purpose, and it's not to self-destruct. I have a lot of friends that have self-destructed, family members who have self-destructed. And I look in the mirror and I think, no, God made me for something greater than self-destruction. That comes natural. If I deny God, it seems that self-destruction becomes a byproduct within time. I see that in cultures, Ed, and you probably do too. Rise and fall of cultures. If you don't control yourself, there's no control worth having. So, at any rate, I'm excited to be a person that knows I'm a sinner. I know that if I'm left to my own reasoning, I'll let someone down, or I'll do or say something hypocritical. So I have God in my life moment by moment, and the moments that God is not in the forefront of my thought processes, I'm going to be sinning. I'm going to be offending you or offending somebody because I don't allow myself to be governed by the Spirit of God. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes, I do. Now, in Wikipedia, it describes it a strict evangelical form of Christianity that influenced Rogowski's life. Did he enter into a different form of Christianity than you, a stricter, more disciplined type of Christianity, or were you guys walking the same path?
Well, we certainly were not walking the same path. We had a lot of things in common as young, testosterone-filled men. Yeah. We both loved the action of rushing down a wall of water or a wall of concrete and doing things on that wall that might get you killed. I mean, we both had that adrenaline addiction, if you will. And that carries over into your social life. If you're not, I was engaged, so I wasn't chasing chicks like I normally would during that time. I believe that Mark was drawn to me by a power greater than either one of us. Mm. I don't want to take credit for his confession. I do want people who deny Satan and they deny Jesus both to take a closer look at what they're denying per the evidence. If you ask for something and you receive it, you'll keep asking. So I just keep asking every day for God to intervene. When I asked God to intervene and tell the story that really happened to Mark, it took 27 years, and then Discovery Channel called me and asked me to do the Shattered thing. I said yes, but I cautioned them against not printing the real story and showing it, which is there was drugs, alcohol, and pornography, and satanic, ritualistic literature, as well as poetry and music that depicted very evil, murderous things in his possession and that he used for entertainment. That is not uncommon. Most people know that the 50 Shades of Grey movie sold millions, not because everyone's appalled by violence and sexuality. So Mark was involved with something that he should have never been involved with early on time. He told me stories of when he was, just a little child being sexually molested. So, and I hear these things, Ed, all the time working with kids in crisis. So it was just an interesting time in life. And as you asked me about that, my conversion to Jesus, when I came to San Diego from Maui after recovering from the car accident, I began to study the New Testament. I mean, like every single day. I enrolled myself in the Horizon School of Evangelism down in San Diego. I was going to go down there and study. I didn't necessarily want to be a preacher, and that was the tough part about during that time of Mark's confession. I wasn't really a pastor. I just knew that Jesus called me like one of the 12 disciples, like I'm just going to do what he said. So he told me he loved me. I'm going to tell other people he loves them. He told me these things that I am desiring are always hurting me. I looked at it and it's true. So I'm not going to desire these things that are hurting me anymore. And I just simply followed him like a child. I followed Jesus Christ in the New Testament like a child. I didn't get really super religious because I didn't know much about religion, nor really care about it. I just wanted to feel that I had control of my emotions, control of my physical body, and I needed help with that. And Jesus was the one that helped me. So I was just sharing that with Mark when I met him. Our time together was very much like brothers. He would always bring to me, Mark would always bring to me like struggles. If it was a financial struggle, if it was a relationship struggle, he was just going, what would Jesus or your pastor or your people at your church, what would they do what Bible passage should I read, if I'm thinking about this or I disagree with that? So he was coming to me like some kind of Bible answer man, and oftentimes I'd go, I don't know, Mark, but I'll get back to you. I'll ask my pastor and I'll do some book work. Maybe I can study that in the Greek language or, oftentimes I would do a study and I'd share my findings with him. And he was very brilliant. He'd go do his studies and he'd call me in the middle of the night and go, hey, I was reading this and what about, and he was pretty right on what he was discovering. And Mark just didn't, he wanted to get married to his high school sweetheart, whoever that was. I'm not sure which girl it was. He had a few different girls, 3 or 4 that he had dated within the last year that I knew him, maybe 3. And so I never knew which girl he was having drama with, but he definitely carried a burden of guilt with him about girlfriends. So he probably had some pretty gnarly relationships. As, of course, Brandy McLean depicts in her interviews there on Shattered. But I wasn't in his inner circle. It was strictly, hey, I found somebody named Augie who's a surfer and he understands me and we're like neighbors and he's low key and we hang out together. So that's what we did.
Did he become a member of the same church as you or he joined a different church?
He never really wanted to join a church per se.
Okay.
And that's probably because Mark was really at the time, he was kind of, some people would say he was kind of following me maybe more than he was following Jesus. And that may or may not be true. I mean, how do we really judge? I know that the fruit of what was coming out of Mark at the time was introspective. Like he'd be like, man, I've been a jerk to this person, or I said things to my sponsor, my agent, or that I shouldn't have said, or I cussed out this person or this skater or that photographer or something. He would always bring his little confessions to me. And I'm like, why do you do this? Well, Ed, I've been working on a lot, but this beggar's bread mentality is a story that I've been telling of just my life, where people come up to me and go, yeah, I robbed a gun store 10 years ago and here's an AR-15 and the weapons, here's everything. I don't know why I'm giving you all these guns, but they're stolen. I'm like, well, did you kill anyone with these guns? And they're like, no, but they've been around. My grandpa and all of them in Canada. This stuff is crazy. So I'll call my friend as a sheriff, and I was in Washington, and I took the guns over to the sheriff's department and said, yeah, this dude just comes right up to me and says he wanted to confess a crime. I don't know why, but here's the guns. And they ended up letting the guy go in sentencing and said, oh, he has to go through rehab programs. Well, they were letting us, our church, we were signing off the rehab. The guy was coming to our church. He got married, had a baby, bought a house. The guy's living happily forever. To my knowledge, never committed another crime. He got off all kind of drugs, and the guy was tattooed from the neck down, and scary as the day is long, teeth missing from meth, but he found Christ, and he turned in the guns. And that was, 4 or 5 years after the Gator experience. And I get people coming to me all the time. I'll be at a conference. Pastor will come up to me and go, "Hey, you're apparently not a good guy to hang out with because you end up confessing all your sins." Not very safe for him. I'm like, dude, people don't have to confess to me. They got to confess to Jesus. I cannot stop somebody from walking up to me and going, "Hey, I don't know why, but I'm supposed to tell you this." But it has happened, Ed, to me 50, 60 times, like significant, crazy stories. And I don't know if it's an anointing or some sort of heavenly gift that God gives me. Maybe I'm just such an idiot that people feel that they can come and tell this other idiot the idiotic thing that they did.
Well, I'm going to try not to confess while I got John on the air.
Yeah, please don't, man.
I'm going to hold back.
Please don't.
Yeah. Our guest today is Augie Constatino. You could find his artwork at constatinoart.com. That's COSTANTINO art.com. And we're talking about Gator Rogowski, also known as Gator Mark Anthony. And Gator also, too, people should know he was in the Tom Petty music video, Free Fallin' with Tom Petty. And let me ask you a question, because you had mentioned Gator was into some kind of, had a fascination with Satanism.
I'm not quite sure where he first, developed that interest. I'll bet you that his closest skater friends could say better than me. But, he had a fascination with like the symbolism, and you'd see these 666s, and he was into the hardcore metal music, a lot of death metal music. He would write some pretty dark poems. He'd have me read, for example, one of his poems and go, "What do you think of that? Is that the devil? Is that evil? Like, where do you think that comes from?" I'm like, "I don't know. Is it the lyrics to a metal song? Who wrote it?" "Oh, I wrote it." And I'd be like, "Oh, well, it just means that you have entertained your..." I looked up at his library. There'd be like every slasher film, Nightmare on Elm Street, all the way to Faces of Death, all volumes, in his books and on the occult and different things. And I just go, "Mark, that's what you like, so that's what you wrote. What more do you want to know? Is that bad of me?" I'm like, "Hey, it's what you've been taught. It's what you've been raised with. That's what you do." I wasn't judging him. And I think that's why Mark was like, "Why should you get rid of it then?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, you should. If you think it's of the enemy, you should get rid of it." He goes, "Well, do you think it's of the enemy?" I says, "Yes, I do." If you want my opinion, you should get rid of all of it. So, that was my approach. And the culture still to this day is very much saturated with that. Just yesterday, I was being slammed on the social media by some Luciferic jokesters. And you may interview these guys and they'll say, "Oh, we don't believe in any of it." Well, to me, that's the devil's biggest lie, is to get you thinking it's all a myth. But Mark was at least a self-styled, like Illuminatist or whatever you call him. He always had the little triangles and the all-seeing eye and the Ankh, which is an Egyptian symbol, promoting all forms of sexual freedom and promiscuity throughout the Egyptian culture back in the day. So, he was into all of that kind of thing. Are we blaming those things? No. It's an atmosphere perhaps conducive to maybe having less empathy when you get out and party, and when you go nuts and you drink, you have less empathy. So if your anger comes up, you're more likely to react with hitting someone over the head with a baseball bat. That's the kind of rage I see and have seen in metal music, skateboarding, surfing. Oh my gosh, the surfers are ruthless.
Really?
Those guys, they'll cave your head in over a wave if you're in the wrong spot. So, it doesn't change. People are people, and if they don't govern themselves carefully, they usually lose control. And these kind of things happen. But anyhow, I'm confident that there was a huge satanic influence in what made Mark a murderer versus just a great athlete.
The reason why I brought up Tom Petty is because I was sent a video of Tom Petty's daughter involved in a ritual with Kenneth Anger, the notorious Satanist.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. Not even a little bit. No, where she's actually naked.
Mark used to go up to Hollywood and do various things, and I would go, "Where are you, man?" He's like, "Oh, I'm doing interviews, or I'm up in L.A. working. I'm doing this and that." And he'd come home and be depressed and have to unpack all the emotional stuff and not really tell me what went on. But I know he was involved in that stuff.
Fascinating.
I just know it. I had 2 of his journals in my possession, and then the FBI guys came and took it. But I could have I could have taken what Mark gave me the night of his confession. I could have presented to you like on a table, and you would have done a documentary on satanic influence. It was so clear. But yet my issue with the Helen Stickler video, my issue even with Shattered that just came out, is they don't talk about these things. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's not touched on. And I'll tell you something else. I contacted everybody with all these videos, and you're the only one willing to come on the show.
Yeah, it's total. Yeah. It's denial.
Yeah.
It's cognitive dissonance. I don't know what it is.
How did the FBI get involved?
Well, I'm not totally. He was an investigator, and I know. I think he's an investigator at the FBI now. Possibly wasn't then.
Okay.
But I was not allowed to keep the videos. They told me they were giving them back to Mark's brother, Matt Rogowski. When I questioned about the content of the basket that they took from me, they all said, "Oh, it was irrelevant to the case."
This is after the conviction,
Mark's sentencing was based, I think, on just a rehash of what he did, completely edited. So that's why he got 27 years. Remember, Mark planned on killing himself in front of my house on the tracks that night. When I tackled him in the street, his intent was to leave everything he confessed on my shoulders. So I did what I had to do, and anyone who disagrees with what I did can work out their own salvation, because I don't know what to tell them. I did the best I could with what I had. And I believed in that miracle moment when God told me, "What would you do if it was your own son?" God had whispered that to me, almost like when I had him on the ground, I was holding him with all my strength. And I immediately started kissing his head and whispering in his ear, "It's going to be okay. Jesus loves you, Mark. The devil hates you and wants you dead. And this family deserves closure, Mark. And I'm going to help you, do this, Mark. And Jesus is going to help you clean this spiritual dark part of your life out right now." And he was like, "Okay, but I want the death penalty." I mean, he really wanted a special circumstance case. He wasn't trying to get off until about 3 weeks after his incarceration. The doublespeak started, the backpedaling. And he didn't want to go down as a suicidal guy, because then they put you in the rubber room and you're isolated if you go in as a suicidal. So nothing on the report showed that he was suicidal. So the public didn't know that he would have killed himself. Nobody knew that. Helen Stickler's video didn't show it.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
that made me furious.
But the thing is, Augie, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I got a couple of quick questions for you. Then I want to start with the whole thing from the time you met Gator to the murders to the confession. But I have a question for you first. You said that they came and took videos from you. This was after the conviction?
After the confession. Remember, I drove him down I went to his house, to the crime scene.
Okay.
My wife was asked by him. My wife asked him if she could clean the stains off his carpet, which he said were coffee. He got all weird. We ended up leaving, but we wouldn't have thought, whoa, maybe it was blood. Of course not. We just thought it was coffee.
Right.
And the idea was Mark definitely, at that point, had probably planned to tell us what had happened. The whole time he was planning to tell me what he did. Why? I do not know. To this day, I would have loved to have further dived through his house and possessions and stuff and try and figure out whether there were other victims. You know, he had eye bolts and shackles in the house.
Oh, really?
Was there other victims? You know, is it just one girl, or had he been doing that for a while? How would we have ever known? So I was just dumbfounded at the way that case went, and the way it is now. My thing is, maybe they should let him out. They should have given him the death penalty. He wanted that. But they kept him alive, and now I just watched the video and listened to him talk. You know, he's a zombie, man. I don't know. Sorry, but
okay. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you first hear about the disappearance of Jessica Bergsten?
I worked for a company, Ed, called Youth Development International out of San Diego. It's a youth crisis hotline. And on Friday nights, I would ride down the street from my house and see kids on the streets, and I would hand out help, not hassle, 1-800-HIT-HOME. Youth hotline. I had thousands of those cards, and I'd hand them out, and I'd say, hey, if you're out here at night, you get in trouble, or anybody, or you need someone to talk to, here's a toll-free hotline. So I'm out handing out these hotline cards trying to help kids out, right? And on the wall, the glass window of 7-Eleven there on Elm Street was a missing $10,000 reward for this missing girl, Jessica Bergsten. Picture of her in her car. And I peeled it off, put it in, prayed for the family, folded it and put it in my Bible, and would pray for those the family members of the missing girl often during a few-week period. Mark was with me several times when I prayed for the girl. So that started the whole thing.
And you had no idea that the two were connected?
Of course not.
Okay.
I was just making a point. The ministry that I was involved with at the time, Ed, was the reason I would even go to 7-Eleven is it was a location where each night I would see kids congregate, 16, 17-year-old kids in cars, nice cars, and they would sit there and wait and ask me to buy beer for them.
Right.
So I started going out with these cards at that same time and handing out these hit home cards to the kids trying to buy liquor, telling them, hey, be careful. Jesus loves you. Take one of these cards, So that's what my routine was on a Friday night, is to go reach kids. So I'm reaching out to kids, and Gator would skate by. Hey, what's up, Augie? And there I was doing my thing. And he I think Gator kind of admired that the surfer, cool Mr. Cool, would, deny his coolness and go ruin his reputation publicly by handing out cards to kids and telling them God loves them. So, some of my friends would go, Augie's a fag now. And I had all kinds of crazy stuff being said about me. But, I expected it,
So I guess the next thing that came up is he invited you up to his home and showed you where the blood was?
Oh, no. Well, timeline being 3 months, I had the missing girl poster with me. Okay. Mark and I had known each other almost a year before he committed that crime. That year was filled with me trying to invite Mark to church, me spending time with him at the skate park, him constantly telling me that he wants to quit drinking, he wants to lose weight, he wants to learn to street skate better, he wants to take his career to the next level, he wants to put off his bad boy image. And I'm just going, hey, the way to do it is Jesus. So he was trying to do that. And while trying to do that, maybe he needed a release, or maybe he was full of stress and he went with an old girlfriend, or went up to a certain party and decided he'd drink again. I don't know what happened, but he definitely, if you would say, backslid, or what you would call it, right?
Right.
So while he did that, it triggered something in him where his highs were way higher and his lows were way lower.
Right.
And so during that time, Ed, I wish we had more time to talk. I'd give you an example. One night I'll give you one.
We have more time. To take as much time as you need.
Okay. One night, for example, Mark and I came home from a small group Bible study. It was a Wednesday evening. Well, it turns out it was a Wednesday evening when he actually committed the murder. Interesting thing. Every Wednesday, Mark and I had a meeting we would go to together, and he would usually make it. I mean, 80% of the time he'd be with me, and some of the time he wouldn't. But this particular Wednesday night, we came home, and Jessie was there. She'd climbed the banister of his outside of his house. She was wearing high top Reeboks and a mini skirt. I don't know if she had undergarments on or not, but she climbed this banister in his apartment and waited up on in his balcony by his bedroom. When we walked up to the front door, she was like, "Hi, boys." Clearly inebriated, clearly seeking, some pretty crazy pleasure. With two guys, she was willing. So he's like, "This is my preacher, man. What are you doing up there? You're trespassing. You got to come down. You need to go home. I'm different now. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to follow Jesus now, man." He's telling her, this is the girl he killed. He's telling her to go home. So the two of them, the night of the murder, apparently, which was maybe even the two Wednesdays after that Wednesday, he's having dinner with this chick on a Wednesday night when he should have been at church, I think. I mean, I would think he would have saved everyone's life had he gone to church that night, but he wasn't there. I went over there afterwards to see if he was in town, because I expected that he was. He had left a message on my machine saying he's in San Francisco. When I went over there were lights on in the house. So I knocked on the door a couple of times. Nobody came to the door. Well, apparently that was the night. Then later his neighbor knocked on the door because Jessica was screaming and freaking out. But, and again, I'm talking to you, Ed, with coming from the position that many of our listeners may or may not have already heard the story. Some may have heard the story and not filling in all the details for you. But that issue that evening was they went to dinner early. They got a bottle of wine from the restaurant. They dropped ecstasy tablets mixed with the wine and were feeling pretty good. Mark suggested they leave, finish the wine later so they don't freak out, get up to North County before they're too inebriated to do so. And the shenanigans that night landed them in Mark's car up in North County with Mark. So Mark had her in the North County at his house under stealth, pretty much. He told me the night of the confession that when they came out of the restaurant, someone had stolen their car. That story never got told, and they never found the car. So when they did the documentary, it just wasn't clear. It didn't make sense to me. Any rate.
Well, what is the significance? What's the significance of the car being stolen? Is that important?
Well, the devil's a liar. So the car was stolen, and Mark probably used the fact that the car was gone as some sort of a way that he could alibi it. It's like a satanic setup, if you ask me, because here he's backsliding. He should have been serving the Lord, not chasing this girl who clearly just wanted to have some kinky time with him, and so, and he wanted it too. Who knows? He probably got her into that. I don't even know what the case was, but he certainly could have saved himself a lot of trouble had he not gone out with her, but to do ecstasy and drink wine at the dinner table and then go up to your house late at night on a Wednesday night and try and have the party they were having sounded like to me a very scary proposal. One point in the evening, and I don't know exactly the chronicle of it all because I don't have access to the story that Mark is now telling. It's very different. But he did say in the transcript that I do have from his confession, he said that he silenced her from crying out for fear, of his own reputation. So it sounded like this quote unquote murder was really birthed more from fear of his own reputation instantaneously. And that's why he struck her with the metal thing what is it? It was a steering wheel lock.
Yeah. Club. Yeah.
One of those. Yeah. It was a steering wheel lock. He hit her with that to get her to cease and desist so that she could sleep it off. And it was the idea that her car was stolen and the drugs and the clear crime scene that he created by hitting her with a steel object that I believe Satan used to talk him into actually killing her and disposing of her. So when people say I'm blaming Satan for the crime, I don't think they really understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that because I believe in a real Jesus and a real Lucifer, I believe that there was some manipulation of Mark going on that night. The alcohol, the drugs, the addiction to the sadomasochism, all those chemicals all working together don't make for a very sane evening. Add pornography, add other elements. I think they smoked weed as well. But the documentary didn't mention the ecstasy or his pills.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Absolutely not. So I'm thinking, accurately, I do sort of feel sorry for Mark. He put everything out there, and he would have murdered himself had I allowed that to happen.
So then he confessed to you before he confessed to the police?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd that happen?
Well, he confessed to me, and then he ran out the door, and I chased him.
So he came to your apartment and said, I just killed somebody? I killed somebody 3 months ago.
Sorry, again, assuming everyone saw the Stoked Rise and Fall of Gator Mark Anthony. He knocked on my door, came into my house, told me he was Judas Iscariot, that he had betrayed Christ and he could never ever be forgiven, and he was not a real Christian. He was a fake. And I said, why are you saying this? What did you do? He goes, go get your Bible. I went and grabbed my Bible. He said, open it up. I opened the front cover. He goes, see that girl? I know where she's at.
Wow.
I said, you killed her, didn't you? He goes, yep. And as we were talking, he was giving me some detail. We were interrupted by the arm of the train closure coming down. Ding, 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 ding. I live 3 doors from the tracks.
Right.
He had parked his car down by the gravel there, and he just says, I got to go. I'm out of here, and bolted. So I'm like, okay, I'm stopping him. I was barefoot in shorts and no shirt. I ran, tackled him, boom, on the ground, and started kissing him and loving him. I think I even sang to him. It was about midnight. We're in the middle of the street. No cars are coming by on Oak Drive, right by 7-Eleven there. And I'm going, bro, I love you. And this family is going to be thankful. Sooner or later, they're going to be thankful for the closure. So as painful as it is, man, we're going to do this. And he's like, you're right. I knew I was supposed to confess to you. He's telling me the whole thing. And I'm like, you're not confessing to me, man. You're confessing to Jesus, and you're confessing to her family and to the public. You do that. You're making the world a safer place, and that's what you'll be judged by God for, who you are at the end of the day. Don't let the enemy make you kill yourself. Though many people have said straight to my face, oh, you should have let him. Yeah, right. I would have probably ended up being a suspect. I mean, don't you think? If I go down to the sheriff's department alone and say, hey, I know where Jessica is.
Right.
The guy who killed her just offed himself on the tracks, and I know all this. I didn't have any audio recording. I had no proof. All I had was his verbal. So, we jumped in my car. We jumped in my car, Ed. And actually, he jumped in his car, and I sat in the passenger seat, which was a drive of faith, let me tell you. He drove his car to his house. My wife followed us because it was around the block. I had moved away from, I lived 5 doors from Mark, but then Stephanie and I got married and moved down the road a little ways. And so it was still a few blocks from his house. We drove him to his house. I went up, I videotaped. I sat him down right by the scene of the crime. Wow. I videotaped his confession in detail. I took his camera and started taking pictures. I took a picture of us, a selfie, of us with a Polaroid so that I could document that we were standing on the truth of what happened. He was sober. He was saying, yeah, I was out of my mind. I don't even remember how we got to the point where she was screaming. He said, I just remember being on top of her and doing the sexual thing, and suddenly she was screaming, and it made me mad instead of scared. And he goes, after that, I don't even know where I went. I woke up the next morning and her body was stiff. She thought she was asleep in the board bag. He put her in a board bag so she wouldn't bleed from her mouth onto the carpet. And in the morning, of course, he was high and drunk. They both passed out eventually. She suffocated, apparently. And he woke up in a delirium and realized he had committed a murder and a rape of this little girl. So, he decided, instead of calling 911 and saying, help me, I'm a crazed lunatic, I don't know what's come over me, I killed this girl, he chose to take her and dispose of it and create some kind of weird alibi or whatever. But, I don't think he was even a suspect. And, the kid he had enough money in the bank. He could have went anywhere he wanted, took steps to hide it all. He really had God touch him. That's what it comes down to the listener. This guy, the whole story is, I was just a conduit. The light came into this guy's heart. He said, I can't continue to be a sicko in private. And he purged it. He purged it all. And unfortunately, a girl lost her life, and all this stuff has gone on.
Okay, now, so he confessed to you on video. Where are those videos today? The police have those videos?
Yeah, the police took it. It was in the basket of stuff that they came and took from me, along with the journals and the drawings and the things that Mark gave me. He actually gave them to me and said it gave me a release of property, handed the belongings, and also wrote a written release, which I still have, of the contents in the basket. And he told me the purpose of it was to explain this crime. He wanted me to put things together and explain how he could go from repenting and wanting Jesus in his life to being filled with demons again to kill. I said, well, the Bible's pretty clear. You clean your house and you don't fill it with something, the devil goes and gets a bunch of demons worse off, and sometimes you're in worse shape than before because
it's 7 times worse.
Yeah, you got to tend to your house,
right?
Keep it clean.
Now, have you ever tried to go to the police and get those back?
No, I lost a job through the whole thing. I lost my career. I lost my reputation, and I never got any money from Jessica's father. I was pretty starving as a newlywed with a baby on the way. I had no money. I was living hand to mouth, serving the Lord, doing my thing, man. I just trusted God. But I never got a call from Jessica's family. Not that they owed me a thank you, but I have 4 kids, man. If somebody helped find the murder of my daughter, I would at least want to call them, if not make good on the promise. I didn't grab that missing poster off the wall so that I could get $10,000, you know. It never entered my mind until 27 years later, when the guys never called me and the families never reached out to me. I've reached out to them. I don't really understand the whole thing. And Ed, that just means there's probably more to it than we know. Yeah. Jessica's father was a defense attorney in Arizona. He was indicted at one point on drugs. I mean, there's a lot going on that people just don't see, and I don't see it. But I've done a little bit of research, and I kind of know why the guy hasn't gotten a hold of me. But I didn't, and I'm not in life for my own profit. I told somebody, Ed, that I'm a for-profit minister. I'm not a non-profit minister. I'm doing this. I'm doing this to support those that speak for God. I don't need prophets. The world needs prophets, those that speak God's word. And
let me ask you
this. That's my thing.
Let me ask you this. How does the confession that you have on videotape, it's now in a police possession, but that confession he gave to you, how does that differ from the public confession that he gave to the police that everyone's talking about?
Oh, it's crazy different. One simply says, I had an addiction to hardcore snuff and pornography that I never told anybody about. I also had addiction to drugs and pills, and I was raped as a child. And I'm a very disturbed man. So it did not depict that he did this on ecstasy. I've done a little bit of toxicology studies just because of all this youth in crisis intervention that I've done over the years. You don't mix ecstasy, not that you should even take that stuff, but to mix the ecstasy with the booze and the marijuana all at one time, and then stir in, the hyper chemical stuff that goes on with sexuality at that level. I can't imagine anybody being in their right mind the night that crime happened. And those elements of the crime were not even detailed nor discussed. And this is what drives me nuts. You know, we all want to know how or why did a crime happen, but then there's not full disclosure. That bothers me.
Okay.
You know?
Well, maybe we can get a hold of those videos and make them public, okay? When we come back, I'm going to take a little commercial break, okay? When we come back, you have more time.
I do, yeah.
Okay, good. You were telling us about how he confessed to you, and how does that differ from the official story he told to the police?
Well, the official story he told police, to me, is a little clouded. I have the detective supplement in my hand now from that date on 5/14/91, but the documents that I'm holding are different than what ended up in the actual prosecution of Mark. So the story I told you earlier is what's written here. This was his confession that he gave me and the police. Okay. Now that confession then came out with detail that contradicted some of the stuff here. For example, the car being stolen when they came out of the restaurant. That disappeared from the testimony. The suicide attempt disappeared from the testimony. And again, perhaps his defense, what was the guy's name? The public defender perhaps told him for legal reasons, hey, you can't say that there was anything to do with suicide, because then you'll end up in a rubber room. And of course, then they strike that from the official testimony. So I don't have the official testimony before me at this time, but yeah, I mean, I've given you a pretty detailed account of what I hold from that case number from Detective Presley 5113 for people who want to find it out. But that's his original confession to me, and the interview with me recorded between myself and Presley.
And then what happened? Then you took him down to the police station, and you both were probably questioned separately, right?
Well, we went down to the sheriff's office in San Diego. We probably arrived there maybe 2 a.m. by the time we actually got down there. They came out to us after we rang the bell and waited for them to send us out an officer. He came out and instructed us, that it's a crime to fabricate a crime. Obviously didn't believe us because of our demeanor. I mean, we were there having prayed, and he didn't kill himself, so he was very excited to live, and he wanted to tell the story of how this happened, so that other skaters or anyone that admired him, his fans or whatever you want to say, he didn't want them to repeat the crime or repeat the downward spiral which led to the crime. He didn't want to see that happen, so he wanted full disclosure. About a maybe 45-minute wait until we had 2 officers come out and very calmly asked Mark to stand up, and they took Mark in, treated him very calm as if no crime had been committed, and they didn't question me much, and then came out and informed me that they were going to go ahead and follow up on Mark's statements on where the body was and all of that. They had no body to go on, so they were going to keep Mark, and that I was free to go. My wife and I, that would have been 10 o'clock the next morning. So we were down in the sheriff's trying to get him to take us seriously for several hours. During that time, which we prayed out publicly, and Mark and I sang some songs. He had his guitar. I think we played some songs. It was a really weird, surreal moment. But, he was just transparent, and he was willing to tell the whole story.
This is so fascinating. You would think that these documentary filmmakers would want to tell this story. You know what I mean? This story is so much more fascinating.
Ed, I hate to interrupt you, but yeah. I'll tell you, you and I, we've seen this.
Yeah.
And I call it the cockroach effect. I don't mean an offense, but I live in Hawaii, where there's a lot of those little underground guys, and they come out at night. They come out when it's dark, and you flip on the lights and they run for cover. And the fact of the matter is there is a conspiracy going on to take the truth from us. There is a conspiracy to poison the minds of our kids with all kinds of uncertainty and lies. And, you acknowledge that and you start to see it. I see it clearly. Many don't. But Mark saw it, and that's what led him to confess. He is uninterested in skateboarding today because he sees the vanity in it all. Now, I don't know where Mark is now as far as his deep devotion to Jesus Christ. I can't speak to that. But I do know that his faith in the Bible and Jesus Christ caused him, for the very first time, it seemed, to look at his life and say, this is not right, and this is not right. And I think that's commendable.
Do you think it's possible he had an accomplice?
Say it one more time.
Do you think it's possible he had an accomplice who was involved in his murder with him?
I think on the level of the crime itself, no, but could he have had friends that he knowingly knew were also involved in the same, if you will, habits or crime? Perhaps. He said things to me that night after the confession that he was concerned that many were involved in the hardcore, violent, if you will, porn. And he thought it was a big problem. In fact, I think there's an article, it may have been the San Diego Reader Weekly. I'm not sure. There was a couple articles where he was interviewed from prison, and he did go into the consuming beast and the demonic power that would come over him through the pornography. Like he would talk about it. And of course that doesn't get mentioned in these things. My interview with Discovery Channel was 9 hours. Ed, we've been on the phone less than an hour. 9 hours of interview and taping, and you saw the show. That's all they could pull out.
No, Discovery I didn't see. The only thing I saw was Gator, Stoked. I didn't see the other one. I didn't see it yet. I'm gonna check it out yet.
It's they'll probably take it off the air. It's so controversial.
Really?
You would think that you will think that Discovery Channel hired an evangelistic producer to produce the show.
Okay, I got to check that out. Now, when's the last time you talked to Gator?
I went and visited him with my oldest son when my oldest son was, I think, 13 or 12. We went together down there to RJ Donovan in San Diego. And, he looked like he'd been in a lot of fights. He looked kind of beat down a little bit during that time. I've seen him on YouTube since, and he looks really good now. He looks fantastic now, actually. But during that time when I visited him, gosh, it must have been 2000 maybe, or maybe 99. When I visited Mark, he did communicate with me that he no longer believed in the form of Christianity, if you will, that I was involved with. And of course, he said that in the Stoked thing, that he was in a brand, quote unquote, of Christianity that was a little tense. And, hindsight, I've grown in God a lot since I was a Calvary Chapel affiliate. Calvary Chapel ordained me finally in the 90s. But I love that church movement. I do believe that there's a tendency for a lot of young Christians to be in leadership, which, like myself, and there were mistakes that I made with Mark, things I said I shouldn't have said. And that's just all of our experience, really. We're always trying to fine tune how we communicate with other people in less than favorable circumstances, right? Mark did not want to withhold things anymore. So as he started speaking out, suddenly we know, oh, you were molested when you never made a police report, and what? But all this stuff comes out, and where do you start? Like, how do you? Which layer is more crucial than the next? You just start peeling one at a time, right?
So what is the story he tells today?
Today, it sounds like I just read, I got his parole transcripts to look over it, and I read, they're long, and of course, Jessica's father's weighing in too, so you get to read what he's saying. Very gnarly, very intense, beyond imagination, the pressure that Mark must be under while he's being questioned about release. I mean, he doesn't want to get out. I wouldn't want to get out. I mean, for crying out loud, why did he want to get out? He doesn't care about skateboarding. He just wants to be at peace with himself after doing something he can never change. He can never regret. Regret itself cannot foster more adoration. He doesn't feel, I'm sure Mark feels that he has no business outside the prison. So I don't know exactly the details of that, but there's so much gang and so much. I mean, if the father of the deceased girl that he raped and murdered is a defense attorney in Arizona, a very successful one, mind you, who's defending murderers. If his daughter is knocked off and the person that does that is in prison, don't you think that there's some connection there? He'd be tuned up so quick. You know, Mark is, I don't know. I watched a YouTube video from, I think it's Gogi or whatever. It's like a prison outreach to help guys in prison. And I listened to a little lecture that Mark gave. Probably was 2 years ago. This lecture was given by Mark. Very humble, very broken man. Not a man, in my opinion, that is arrogant and in prison to prove anything. He's broken, low. He probably is very confused still because he's kind of denied the simplicity of some of the things that caused him to confess in the first place. But yeah, his parole hearing documents, as you read them, they show a man that does not want to get out of prison, and he clings to what he did and makes no excuses for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The hard part about being a gospel Christian is sometimes just pointing out darkness and evil can put off an air like we're making an excuse. You know, the devil made me do it mentality, if you will. Mark didn't come to me crying saying the devil made me kill a girl. He came to me crying saying that my addiction got the best of me and I'm evil and that I can't be forgiven. And that's why he called himself Judas, remember? Mm. And Judas went out and hung himself, it says. Mark was stopped from hanging himself. So how does that play out? Well, ask an expert. I'm not one. I don't know how that plays out. But I know God gets the glory, Ed, and should. God gets the glory for this man confessing something he otherwise wouldn't. Empathy leaves the serial killer. Empathy leaves the habitual, corrupt criminal. They have no empathy. It's gone. Mm. With Mark, as many times as he's been hit in the head, and he probably has brain and gut issues from his health, and then all the, what is that, football players get that CTI or whatever, they get that head trauma thing going on. I mean, there's 1,000 excuses you could enter into this game, but the main thing I saw was drugs, alcohol, and a reckless abandon when it comes to things satanic. You know, from a Christian standpoint, the things that Mark was entertaining himself were nothing less than satanic.
And now that you're involved in like online discussions and debates about this, you experience an organized opposition to you?
Yeah, but it's the source of that organized opposition is infantile and confused. Okay. So I'm considering the source. It's a bunch of narcissists, and a lot of them are in LA. So I went to LA to expose my great grandfather's stolen estate up on Beverly Hills, and people just blackballed me completely because of my faith. Even though I said, listen, I'm not trying to take the land back. I'm not trying to lay claim to anything. I just want history recorded. You wanted to preserve the architecture of the home, so why not preserve the memory of the artist that made it happen? You know, so those issues, you find out from somebody that has me over for coffee, oh, that's owned by so-and-so, and he got indicted for crimes against a child, and so he's probably not going to like you when he does a little research about what you expose. So, I walk in full truth with my own sins in the past and with others. I'm going to be that's why I think I'm approachable, because I'll go to people and I'll just tell them, I dropped out of high school. I don't have a bunch of accolades to tell you about. I was born into a family of supposed criminals. Well, it turns out they're not criminals after all. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I'm a unique person. I think God has a sense of humor when he named me Augustine, because I'm not that August, and he uses the foolish things to confound the wise, and I qualify.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Now, we're pretty much out of time. What do you want to leave us with in all this story?
The moral of the story is, don't treat the occult and hurting of other people as something light and something not an issue, because whether you believe in God or not, nature itself is not going to let you get away with it. All roads lead to truth. All roads lead to light. There's no black light. You can't get darkness and have anything. So those that serve and live in darkness, you got nothing to work with. Lucifer can't make promises for your future because he doesn't make deals with those that he despises. And he has no friends. He only has slaves and subjects. So the Lord is different. He makes you a friend. He makes you a son, a daughter. He forgives your diseases and heals, and he understands like a father. So anyhow, it's a no-brainer. I want everyone to know, confessed a crime that would have never been confessed if it wasn't for Jesus. It may have happened to many other people. So give glory to God, people. I mean, light exposes darkness. That's the nature of it. Embrace it.
I can't thank you enough. I tell you, I think we were blessed here to get your testimony in this situation here, especially when no one else wanted to talk about it, and no one knew. I have no agenda here. No one knew what my direction with this story was, and we got the perfect story here. Augustine Constatino, ConstantinoArt.com. Thank you so much, brother.
Aloha.
Good night. Wow. Okay, so there we had Augustine Constatino. Check out his website, ConstantinoArt.com. COSTANINO art.com. Fascinating. I'm definitely going to get a hold of this guy and try and get a follow-up on this with some more interview, and try to get a hold of those confessions from the police department. Those are no longer evidence. We should be able to get those. They are Mr. Constantino's property. We should be able to get that. Okay, we'll look into that for sure. And this is just fascinating, because if you got to go check out these documentaries. None of this is talked about. The way they try and make it sound is that Gator Rogowski became this fanatical Christian and was tormented between his celibacy and lashed out due to his fanatical Christianity and killed this girl because he didn't want to have sex with her. Totally different story, version of events here when we have a video. It just goes to show you the people involved in these documentaries and their agenda. So thank you so much, Augustine Constatino, ConstantinoArt.com. If you like today's show, check out OppermanReport.com. You got some exclusive content here today, guys. You haven't heard anywhere else. And this guy's been interviewed for 9 hours here, 9 hours there, documentaries here, Wikipedia there, all this kind of stuff. And you haven't heard any of the stuff he's talked about on this show. Okay? So if you want this to keep coming out, we got to pay for this. So you become a member, OppermanReport.com. Join, become a member there. Support this content. Support these investigations. Support this reporting. You become a member. It's a little $6 a month. You go to OppermanReport.com. And if you want to get a discount, you contact me through my email, OppermanReport@gmail.com. You send me $65. I'll give you 13 months. You send me $40, I'll give you 6 months. Okay? If you want to donate, you're already a member. If everybody that was a member I sent $3 a month. Okay, hey, Ed, I'm a member. I enjoy it. I haven't heard anybody ever say they don't like the member section. I've never heard a member say they don't appreciate the member section. There's 185 shows in there. There's exclusive documents, exclusive videos in the member section. Never heard one person say, you know what, Ed, I subscribe to your member section and it sucks. Not once. Okay, if everybody that was a member sent $3 a month, additional little donation, my God, what we could be doing here. You have no idea. I could be flying to Hawaii, interviewing this guy, filming with him, getting his video back from the cops. All this kind of work we could be doing, guys. I'm willing to do the work, you know. They just need some funding. OppermanReport.com, become a member. OppermanReport.com, donate. Become a donator. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. By the way, check out this guy's art, too, man. Incredible stuff. ConstantinoArt.com. Beautiful stuff, man. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like a modern kind of, at this picture, this fish on here. When you go on, it turns red and blue. Oh, man, and then teal green. It's a beautiful, beautiful work, man. And I got more fish. Let me see what other fish he's got here. And he goes into the whole thing, too. There's some story about his grandfather. I couldn't quite follow it. With the black hand and stuff going on. I'm a little focused on one thing at a time. The Lahania fish. Oh, my God, this stuff is beautiful. Maybe I can get him to send me some art. I put it on my wall. I'd love to put this on my wall. This is beautiful stuff, man.